Near Berlin, April 28, 1945. A ruined church, roof open to a bruised sky. A single candle trembles on a cracked altar. Outside, artillery mutters like distant thunder that forgot the rain. He's 16 and trying to make his handwriting look older than he is. The paper is a torn hymn sheet. The ink is running out. His name, Ernst Weber, is written at the top, small and careful, like a boy knocking before opening his own door. Dear Mother, I am well. The weather is better here and we still have bread. Please do not worry. The nib scratches. He stops, hears the world inhale, then starts again. That was the sentence I thought I should write. It is not true. If you're reading this, then I could not keep my promise to come home. A fragment of stained glass lies beside him, blue as summer, edged in ash. He turns it between his fingers, laying it over the candle's flame until the light shines ocean green across the page. Somewhere beyond the broken walls, a loudspeaker in another language plays a tune so soft it sounds like it wandered into the wrong century. Ernst glances at the doorway where doors used to be, then bends lower. We are in a church with no roof. The stars come in before evening now. I can't tell if the dust I breathe is from yesterday or today. He pauses to warm his hands over the candle, palms hovering as if truth might be a temperature. Around him, boys sleep in pews that survived the falling stones, boots tangled in coats, faces slack with the kind of exhaustion that has forgotten how to dream. I told the officer I was 17 when I joined. I said it quickly so he would not count. I am only 16, Mother. I am writing it down here so at least one thing I say tonight is honest. The wind pushes a sheet of ash through the nave. It skates across the floor, comes to rest against his boot. He nudges it away with a toe as if guilt were light enough to move. They said we were the wall between Germany and chaos. But walls are made of stone, and I have always been made of paper. He looks up at the crucifix, still clinging to the far pillar, the wood charred, the figure soot-streaked and strangely tender in the candlelight. He remembers the garden at home, the pear tree that leaned over the fence, the way his mother's hands were always dusted with flour on Sundays, the sound of a clock that never hurried. Do you remember the smell of bread on the blue mornings? I have been chasing that smell in my sleep. When I wake, the air tastes like keys and smoke. The candle gutters, he cups it with his palm. The flame recovers, a small, stubborn heart. I am not writing to be brave. I have decided I don't know what that word means. I am writing so that in some house with a table and a window, your hands can touch these words and know they were mine. He listens. The guns are closer now, but sometimes they recede and it feels like a mercy. In the apse, someone whispers a prayer into his sleeve, not loud enough to bother God, just enough to steady breath. Ernst presses the nib to the paper again. Slower now, deliberate, each letter a plank he's laying across a river that won't stop. Tell Father, no, do not tell him anything. Keep him as he was before marches and medals. Tell Liesel I still have the marble she lost under the cupboard. I keep it in my pocket to remind me that round things roll home when the floor is even. He almost smiles. Then he hears the track-rattling growl that announces morning too early. A man on the other side plays a song through a speaker. It sounds like lullaby. I didn't know music could sound like forgiveness. The ink thins. He shakes the pen and leaves a constellation of dots along the margin. I'm sorry for saying I wasn't afraid. I am afraid in very ordinary ways, of dark steps, of loud metal, of not finding the word after. He underlines nothing, but the page seems underlined anyway by the candle's shadow. If this letter never reaches you, then at least the wall heard it, and the night, and the star that fell when the roof did. I will try to sleep. If morning comes the way it has been coming, I will write again. He signs with a boy's signature that wants to become a man's, and blows on the ink as if breath could make truth dry faster. Your son, Ernst. He folds the hymn sheet once and tucks it into an envelope he took from a drawer with broken handles. On the back, in pencil, he prints a final request. If found, please tell my mother the truth. The candle flickers, throws his shadow long across the aisle, and for a heartbeat, the church looks whole again. Outside, the city tightens its jaw. Inside, a 16-year-old finishes his first honest paragraph. The night leans closer to read. Berlin's outskirts, April 29th, 1945. The candle is almost gone now, just a trembling wick in a puddle of wax. Ernst writes faster, afraid of the dark more than the shells. The night outside sounds like a storm made of engines. He pauses when the ground shakes. Dust rains down from the ribs of the ruined roof. Somewhere in the distance, a man is shouting orders that no one hears anymore. He steadies his hand and writes again. Mother, I think we are losing. They told us to hold the city for one more day, but I think the city is tired of being held. He listens. The gunfire is constant, but distant enough that hope can still pretend. Someone near the doorway hums a song, soft, broken, beautiful. There is a soldier here who sings even when no one asks him to. He says he does it to remember his wife's voice. Tonight, he sang through an explosion. Maybe that's what courage is, not silence, but sound that refuses to stop. Ernst's fingers are black with soot and ink. The paper trembles as he writes, but he doesn't stop. I wanted to believe in what they said. They said we were fighting for home, for honor. But every step we take leaves less of both. The houses look at us like they want us gone. Even the air feels ashamed. He lifts his eyes. Through the collapsed roof, the moon stares down, pale and tired, caught behind smoke. A single beam of light falls across his hands, and for a moment he imagines it's morning. From somewhere outside the church, a voice echoes in Russian, then the deep thump of artillery. The sound rolls through the city like thunder crawling down empty streets. Ernst flinches. Bits of plaster fall from above, landing on the letter like snow. He brushes the flakes away gently, whispering to the page, "Don't let them cover you too." He presses his pen down again. "I lied, Mother. I said I wanted to fight, but I only wanted to belong. When they gave me a uniform, I thought it meant I mattered. Now it just means someone far away decided how I'll die." He stops. The ink catches on the fibers of the paper. He stares at the wet letters until they stop bleeding. In the pew behind him, a boy named Otto coughs. Each sound sharper than the last. Ernst turns, sees him clutching a medal like a charm. They lock eyes for a moment. Two boys pretending to be what the world told them to. Otto smiles, the kind of smile that knows too much. "Write fast," he whispers. Then he leans back and closes his eyes. Ernst writes faster. "I am 16, and I think the war has lasted longer than my childhood. I used to count days by sunsets. Now I count them by who doesn't wake up. The candle gives up suddenly, just smoke now. Ernst continues in the dark, writing by memory, each stroke a guess. His hand moves by instinct, his heart by panic. If you could see this place, you would understand. The buildings are open like mouths. The streets have forgotten their names. But sometimes, Mother, the light still falls through the smoke and looks like hope trying again. He stops to listen. The guns are closer now. A voice calls from the street, not in German. He folds the letter halfway, as if to protect it from the sound. But then he hesitates. He hasn't finished yet. He can't. He adds one more line. If I don't make it home, tell them I wasn't brave, but I was here. He presses the pen down too hard. The tip snaps. A drop of ink spreads across the word brave, blurring it. He stares at it, then laughs softly. The sound strange in the silence. Maybe that's how truth looks. Messy, honest. He folds the page again, tucking it inside his jacket. The letter is damp from his hands, warm against his heart. He looks up once more at the moon through the hole in the roof and whispers, "Just a little longer." Outside, the music starts again. That same haunting melody through the Soviet loudspeakers. Not a march, not even a song of victory. Something gentle, human, something that shouldn't exist in a place like this. Ernst closes his eyes and listens. I didn't know music could sound like forgiveness. The line repeats itself in his head as the church shakes, the candle smoke twisting in the air like a ghost that doesn't want to leave. He was 16, sitting in the ruins of a faith too big for him, writing the kind of truth men twice his age had forgotten how to say. And somewhere out there, the world kept burning, not waiting, not listening, not knowing that a boy's words were trying to outlive the fire. Berlin, April 30th, 1945, the morning that history itself began to end. The candle is gone. The church smells of wet stone, iron, and endings. Ernst sits with his back to the altar, the paper spread across his knees. The light that filters through the broken roof is the color of dust. He doesn't look at the sky anymore. The sky hasn't looked back in days. He dips the pen into what's left of the ink. It scrapes the bottom of the bottle like a spoon in an empty bowl. He smiles faintly. "Just enough," he whispers. Then he writes again, slower now, not as a soldier, but as a son. "Mother, I need to tell you something before the next noise comes. I joined because I thought courage would make me taller, because they said Father would be proud. I told them I was 17. I told you I was safe. I have lied so many times that I no longer know which words belong to me." He stops, stares at the ink drying unevenly across the page, and runs a finger through it, smudging his own confession. They told us that honor meant not crying. But last night, when the shells fell near the river, I cried anyway, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I realized I hadn't done anything worth dying for. He looks around the church. The pews are broken now, some turned into barricades, others into coffins. A helmet rolls across the floor, clinking softly as if embarrassed to be seen. He writes again, faster. They said we were the wall between Germany and chaos. But the wall was already crumbling, and we were only bricks pretending to be stone. We built nothing. We only stood between lies and the truth long enough to fall in between. He pauses. His breath trembles. The pen slips from his hand. He picks it up. leaving a fingerprint of ink on his cheek. There was a boy named Otto, the one who sang. He said if he died, he hoped someone would remember his song. I told him I would, but when he fell, I couldn't remember the words. I only remember that he smiled at the end. The page is half full, half ruined. He flips it over using the back, the side of a hymn that once praised salvation. If there is a God, he must be tired. He has heard too many languages asking for the same thing. I will not ask him for life, only that, if he can, he lets you know that I tried to be good before the world taught me otherwise. He presses the pen harder now, the words gouging slightly into the paper. Each letter feels like a heartbeat. Mother, please don't hang my picture in uniform. Remember me as the boy who climbed the pear tree too high, who dropped the bread dough and laughed when the cat ate it. Remember me before the shouting started. He looks up at the shattered crucifix again. For a second, it seems to bow toward him, its head dipped in smoke. He wonders if faith and regret have the same face. Outside, the tanks are closer. The sound rolls through the church walls, deep, metallic, final. Someone screams his name. He doesn't answer. He just keeps writing. I can hear them coming now. The ground shakes as if it wants to wake up. I'm trying to keep my hand steady. I don't want the last thing you see of me to look afraid. He looks down. His handwriting trembles anyway. He smiles sadly. Maybe honesty is braver than courage. So here is the truth. I am 16 and I am afraid, but I'm writing anyway. The roof cracks. Plaster falls onto the page, mixing with ink and ash. He doesn't stop. Every word is a refusal to disappear quietly. Tell my mother the truth. I was brave only once, when I admitted I was afraid. He underlines it once. The pen catches mid-stroke as the explosion hits nearby. The ink splashes. The line ends halfway through his next word. The letter flutters from his hands. It lands in the dust, half covered by pieces of the roof, half visible in the trembling light. Outside, the noise fades. The city exhales for the first time in years. For the rest of that day, no one picked up the letter. By nightfall, rain began to fall through the open ceiling, soft and steady, turning the ink into rivers. Somewhere inside that blur of blue and black, a mother's name floated above the wreckage, the last thing that refused to drown. Berlin, May 1st, 1945. The city was nothing but echo and smoke. The church was gone. The letter was buried under dust and glass, its edges curling, ink bleeding into the stone floor like it was trying to hide. By the time silence arrived, the boy was already part of it. 10 years later, West Germany, 1955. The postman stood awkwardly at the gate, his cap in his hands. The woman on the porch looked older than her years, her hair white at the edges, though she was barely 40. Her name was Anna Weber, and for a decade she had learned how to live around absence. The postman cleared his throat. Frau Weber? She nodded. He handed her a brown envelope, the paper soft with time. A red stamp marked "Returned by Red Cross, unclaimed military correspondence." There was no sender's name, only a faint line of handwriting in the corner, the kind a child would write carefully, afraid of making a mistake. E. Weber, Berlin, April 1945. Anna's hands trembled as she turned it over. The seal cracked easily. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice. The ink blurred but still legible. She didn't need to read the signature. A mother knows her son's handwriting even after the world has forgotten it. She sat down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. No radio, no footsteps, only the faint ticking of the clock that had survived the war with her. The letter opened with the words every mother has dreamed of and feared at once. Dear Mother, I am well. The weather is better here. She read it aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. At first it sounded almost normal, a schoolboy's tone, polite and careful. Then she reached the next line. That was the sentence I thought I should write. It is not true. Her breath caught. The paper shook in her hands. She read on, each word carving its way through years of silence. I lied. I am 16. I wanted to belong. They told us we were the wall between Germany and chaos. But walls are made of stone, and I have always been made of paper. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Outside, the world was spring again. Birds, children playing somewhere beyond the fence, all the things her son had never heard again. Mother, please don't hang my picture in uniform. Remember me as the boy who dropped the bread dough and laughed when the cat ate it. She smiled then, through tears, remembering it. The cat had been named Otto. Her son had been 8. The tears fell harder. When she reached the final line, her voice broke completely. Tell my mother the truth. I was brave only once, when I admitted I was afraid. The words ended mid-sentence, a streak of ink trailing off like a heartbeat that forgot how to finish. Anna pressed the paper to her chest, eyes closed, breathing it in as if the ink still carried his scent. The clock ticked. The world kept turning. Hours later, she lit a candle on the kitchen table, the same kind she had burned during blackouts when he was a boy afraid of thunder. The flame flickered in the same rhythm it must have all those years ago in that church near Berlin. She set the letter beside it, watched the paper tremble in the candlelight, and whispered, "You came home, my love, late, but home." Then softly, as if answering him across time, she said, "You weren't afraid. You were honest." Outside, the wind stirred the garden. The pear tree still stood, scarred but blooming. A single white petal drifted through the open window and landed on the letter. The candlelight caught it, pale against the ink, like forgiveness made visible. The letter stayed on the table until the flame burned out. It was never sent to any museum, never read at any memorial. It remained where it belonged, between a mother and the truth. History counts its dead in numbers. Mothers count them in sentences left unfinished. He was 16, and his last act of defiance was not a bullet or a flag. It was honesty written under candlelight. And somewhere in that fragile ink, a boy's truth lived longer than the war that killed him. Germany, 1995, 50 years after the war ended. The museum was small, quiet, the kind of place that people pass by without noticing. Old uniforms behind glass, medals that no longer shone, maps full of arrows pointing nowhere. At the far end of the hallway, a new exhibit had opened. Letters from the war, voices of the lost. Inside a glass case lay a single sheet of paper, browned with age, its edges soft. The ink faded, but still stubbornly legible. The caption read, "Letter from Ernst Weber, 16, German Volkssturm, found in Berlin, 1945. Donated by Anna Weber, 1947." A group of visitors moved through the room, murmuring, respectful but detached. Only one stayed behind. A young man, maybe 20, with a folded jacket under his arm. He leaned in closer to the glass. His reflection hovered over the letter, half shadow, half memory. He read the words slowly, mouthing them to himself. Tell my mother the truth. I was brave only once, when I admitted I was afraid. His throat tightened. He wasn't related, not by blood, but he felt something reach across the decades and tap gently at his chest, as if the boy's voice had found a way to keep speaking. The museum guide noticed him lingering and said softly, "That letter survived because it was tucked inside a coat that belonged to a Russian soldier. They found it in a warehouse when they cleared the rubble. His mother donated it years later." The young man nodded, but didn't look up. He just whispered, "He was my age." The guide smiled sadly. They were all someone's age. Outside, the air smelled of rain and iron, the same scent, perhaps, that had drifted through Berlin 50 years before. The young man sat on the museum steps, the letter's final line replaying in his mind like a song with no chorus. He took a small notebook from his jacket, opened it to a blank page, and wrote, "He was 16. I am 20. Between us, a silence still breathing." He closed the notebook, looked up at the gray sky, and thought of how many words had been lost in that color. Black and white film rolls, boys in oversized uniforms, smoke curling over broken buildings, a mother's hands folding a letter. Wars end on paper before they end in hearts. The guns go silent long before the memories do. Ernst Weber was 16 when he wrote his last truth. His letter outlived every order, every lie, every flag. It was written for one pair of hands, but it was meant for all who ever called fear a weakness. The image fades into color. The same pear tree still standing, branches trembling in the modern wind. Its blossoms fall into the grass like bits of snow too late for winter. A close-up shows the plaque at its roots. To the children of war, who wrote when the world stopped listening. The wind turns one last page of the notebook resting nearby, revealing the final line, a quote engraved beneath it. "Honesty is the only courage that never kills." The camera lingers, the sky clears. The sound of distant church bells, not alarms, not sirens, just bells, echoes softly through the air. He never made it home, but his words did. And sometimes that's all history needs. One voice that chose truth over survival.